Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for Business Ego Juku. My name's Christy and I'm your host for today, so let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to Business Ego Juku. My name is Christy and I'm here with David Wagner.
Hello everyone.
David, welcome back. As you know, David is a business communications specialist and NHK host. Today's topic for session 6 is leading meetings. 2020 has really tested everyone's strengths, myself included. As leaders and communicators, and leading meetings has become a thing done through computer screens and sometimes maybe going back to in person, but it's really, really important. So my question to you is, how do I lead a productive meeting where my team and I come out of it with concrete decisions and conclusions?
It's a great question. I've been doing meeting skills courses for 30 years in Japan. And it's interesting because Japanese really don't learn how to do this stuff. A lot of Americans, such as myself, get to exposure in high school or maybe university. But I've got a slide I want to show you that might highlight some of the things to keep in mind. And this one is a summary of what it's like to be a chairperson in a meeting. And that's what we talk about in terms of leadership. And I'm just going to go down the list of things that I think are important to consider for everybody. So if you're a chairperson and leading a meeting, obviously first we need to clarify the issues. What are they? Let's be clear what they are before you go in. Let's set the objectives, maybe a single objective or multiple objectives to achieve by the end of the meeting, and let's state that clearly. Let's make sure the meeting is structured with an introduction, a body, and a closing, very clear separation. Let's identify strengths and weaknesses of your members. What I mean by that is, who are your strong participants? Who are the sort of passive, weaker ones? And how can you include them in the process? Allocate roles. Do you need some help from people in the group? Do you need someone to manage the time? Want to do it yourself? Do you need somebody to take notes? Do you want to do it yourself? Let's think about that before the meeting starts. Support members as they move along. For example, just comments like, that's a great idea, that's an excellent point. That helps make a very positive atmosphere. Exercise discipline happens less in Japanese meetings and a lot outside of Japan. What that means is, if somebody's having a side conversation during the meeting and it's noisy and it's disrupting the meeting, then the chairperson should come in and say, for example, with a question, did you have something you want to share with us? So the idea is that we don't have disruptions and everybody's really focused. And that's really hard now because everybody's got their cell phones and they're doing their emails during the meeting anyway. But at least the chairperson can manage the process. Maintaining momentum means keep moving. Forming a consensus is the ultimate goal. Managing the time with a time target. Create and implement an agenda. This is really important for the structured implementation of the meeting. Involve everybody at all times. Stay focused. Facilitate the discussion, but not decide the discussion. And that means the final point, which is highlighted, which is remain neutral. I think in Japan, the chairperson is usually the decision maker. And I think outside of Japan, that's not so common. Certainly in the United States, chairperson usually doesn't make the decision. The chairperson just manages the process. So if I make the decision as the chairperson, I don't need the meeting to happen. I can just decide without you. A great chairperson, 80-90% of the time, empowers the group, empowers the team as a group to make the decision. And then if you need to give input as a team leader, that's fine. But there's a real difference between making a decision as a leader and making a decision as a team.
That's a really good point. And it makes me reflect on a group that I've been a part of called Toastmasters. And maybe some of you have already joined a club or are thinking of joining one. But something I do notice is that every person who's a member that's in there kind of has a task along the lines of what you listed out. So there's a timekeeper, make sure people don't go over. There's somebody who kind of takes notes and makes sure that everyone's kind of on track with the agenda. But like you mentioned, for me in Japan, I actually do a lot of meetings where I'm also doing both the spokesperson role and kind of leading the conversation is not the easiest thing, especially through a computer. So what are some tips that you might have for somebody who is both the decision maker and is conducting the meeting as far as preparing any type of notes? Do you suggest people have agendas or
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah, be as organized as possible, be as transparent as possible,
okay.
have as much written material so people can visually see it as
Mhm.
auditorily hear it. So
Yeah,
you're hitting those two channels. I think the most important thing is the framing of what you expect. Let everybody know at the beginning how the process is going to work. And if you have questions, feel free to cut in anytime. Let's not interrupt each other. Let's speak one at a time. Especially with this technology like Zoom or Microsoft
right,
Teams, it's hard because people are raising their hand or they're showing their sign that they're interested. So again, it's control, but not stifling control.
right.
It's the ability to make sure that we're using our time efficiently. And last night here in the States, I was in a board meeting with a bunch of Americans. It was a 3 hour meeting and there was no control, and
Oh my.
one guy was dominating and it was driving me crazy. So it's not really necessarily a Japan issue, it's a
Yeah.
global business issue. And one more point about Japan, there's a thing called Namawashi, which is pre-arranged decisions in a meeting. And that's very common in Japan, where the meeting is basically a rubber stamp to approve something. The
Mhm.
decision's been made before the meeting. I think in American meetings, for sure, most of the time the decision has not been made. That's why we're having the meeting.
Right.
Huge cultural difference between Japanese and American meetings.
Right. That's really important. And I think I noted too when you're talking about setting kind of boundaries for the meeting, that's really important because, like you said, the experience you had last night was not enjoyable, I'm sure, to be sitting somewhere for 3 hours. And I think that can have a ripple effect, when you're running a business or if you're part of like the board of a nonprofit. Not many people, feel as engaged, and it might lead to folks leaving your organization. So this is a really critical part of communication, right?
I totally agree.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, David. This was a wonderful tip for all of us to take home and take to our businesses or our board meetings. And really appreciate you today.
Happy to do it. See you soon.
See you next week. Thanks. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's session of Business Ego Juku. We are going to have new videos every week, so be sure to check it out and stay tuned. See you next week. Bye.